So when I was about 10, there was a tea seller who parked his roller cart behind my house. He wanted to get to know me, and he asked me which Indian language I spoke. I told him Tamil, and he said, "Oh, Chulia." And I didn't quite understand what Chulia meant at that point in time, but later, I got involved in heritage work in the Indian community, I came to understand that this referred to people from the Coromandel coast or Coromandel coast. And those who came in the 19th century were largely referred to, the Indian Muslim merchants then were referred to as Chulia merchants. The Tamil Muslims themselves will, of course, identify themselves by the languages they spoke, whether it's Tamil or Urdu or Malayalam, and the religion which they subscribe to, perhaps even the particular mazhab or the school of Sunni Islam which they subscribe to, namely whether they are Hanafis or Shafis. So the Hanafis, majority of them will call themselves Rautar, and the Shafis, many of them will call themselves Marakar. And these again are common terms, suffixes added to the names. After the name they have Marakar, and after the name they have Rautar. Chulia was one of the many terms that have been used to describe Tamil Muslims over the years. We've had words like Kling, we have Chulia, we have Jawi Peranakan, Tamil Muslim, Malayali Muslim, Urdu speaking Muslims, and this all basically referred to those who came from the southern part of India and to this part of the world at different time periods. So Kling was used primarily from people of this part of the world during Buddhist times. During the rise of the Chulia dynasty in India, from that onwards, when the Muslims started coming to this part of the world, the word Chulia became to be used. And the British referred to Muslims coming from South India as Chulia traders. When the prominence of the Chulia traders rose and they started coming to the Malacca Straits, that's also the time where the British extended their influence to this part of the world, primarily Penang, where there was already a sufficient number of Chulia Muslims, in Kedah in particular. And when Penang opened up as a British port, they were among the earliest there. And this influence then from Penang on to Singapore, when the British set up their port here, it was a natural flow for the Chulia Muslims to similarly establish themselves in Singapore. So one of the things that the British did when they set up a port in both Penang and later in Singapore is to recognize the main players in setting up the port. And these were the Chulia merchants. And to recognize the Chulia merchants and the people who operated the port, they saw it as important to set up the places of worship that was important to them. One of the key monuments is Nagur Dargah. And Nagur Dargah in Nagur is a mausoleum set up in honor of Saint Shahul Hamid. Saint Shahul Hamid was believed to be the saint of the seafarers and all who needed the sea for their livelihood, whether it's pearl divers, fishermen, traders, or sailors. And so when the British set up the port of Penang, they realized it's important to recognize this faith, this belief that these sailors and traders had. And they set aside land for the establishment of Nagur Dargah in Penang. So similarly in Singapore as well, along the coast of Teluk Ayer, we will see Nagur Dargah, possibly the earliest faith-linked monument set up there. Oral history has it that it was set up even before the British came, and when the British came, it was re-established as a concrete monument. And next to Nagur Dargah, you have Al Abrar Mosque. It was not a concrete monument in the early days, but it was very typical for Indian Muslims to set up a Nagur Dargah and a mosque as part of their tradition to honor the saint, as well as to be able to pray the daily prayers or 5 prayers in whichever port they went to. So there's a Nagur Dargah mausoleum in India, specifically Nagur, and there are also memorials in several places in Malaya as well as in Singapore and in Aceh as well. Saints in Islam, or peers or waliullahs, are a very important part of the belief system of Tamil Muslims. So you will still find a lot of Tamil Muslims named after the saints, and the tradition continues till today. And in the old days, in the maritime era, it was a common practice to name children and ships and boats after the Muslim saints. And this meant the boats as well as the children are well protected for their long journeys, for the hazardous journeys that they will take across the Straits. And you could actually identify by their names which part of Tamil Nadu they came from. It's interesting how I came to speak Tamil. I started school learning Malay as a second language. One day my father came to school. He saw the Malay kids playing outside in the field, and he wondered why. And I told him because the Malay students don't take national language, and so we get to play. He was not happy. So he went back and asked the principal if something could be done. He came home and he had always been impressed by this neighbor of ours, a Chinese lady who spoke Tamil. That lady had been adopted during the war by an Indian family. So he decided that since nobody at home spoke an Indian language, I should be the first. And so I started Tamil at primary 2. Now, coming to learn Tamil was a big challenge for me. I had to master the writing. I had to memorize many of the proverbs, and these were very, very difficult for me. So one key teacher for me was Tamil radio, and two people in particular, T.M. Soundarajan and P. Susila. It was from the singers that I picked up my Tamil and the fluency and how to connect words and emphasize the pronunciation and learn to love the language. And within a year, I caught up and I was doing well.